Philippe,
Then
you have the
then
floor.
I start. A good morning to all the Belgians and a good afternoon for those who are in India. First of all, and you understand that, let me start with expressing my deepest and profound thoughts for what's happening to the people in India. We wish you a lot of strength there in India to overcome those difficult times, as well personal, naturally, but also professionally, because as Hans de Vuijs just told me, he's now in a lockdown in his house in Chennai, cannot go to the office. And we hope and we know that some of you are, let's say, hit by in their families and their friends by really awful cases where people die, where people have symptoms which do not enable them to work. So this is a really serious situation. And from the bottom of my heart, I hope that the vaccines will be rolled out in a big way in India and in a fast way, that your hospital capacity will be able to help the people, which is not always the case, that there is enough medical equipment, that there is enough oxygen, and that you have some maybe luck in seeing a decrease of the infections. I saw this morning that the number of infections was a little bit down in India, but it's still huge numbers, nearly reaching the 400,000 cases per day, which is awful. But nevertheless, we have to be optimistic. I told it in a seminar which we were holding here with VOCA a few days ago, where also BICI, the Belgian Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, was associated with, and I gave an intervention there. We have a duty to stay optimistic, to see the silver lining, if there is any silver lining, and to look beyond the current difficult times, to look beyond the chaos, to look beyond all the pain and the suffering which is going on. And therefore, my great thanks, Stefan, to you and to Ilyas and to Rajiv Dhawan and Amit Mittal, who are in India. Thank you so much, Stefan, that despite that difficult situation, that you take the time to let's say, host this seminar, co-host it, Vicky, and to bring us up to the information needed concerning the requirements to enter the public procurement market in India, and to let's say, have a seminar about the routes to enter that market. Because India is not a country, it's a continent, it's a subcontinent. It's a huge country, not only in size and a number of people, but it's also a country with huge needs for infrastructure investment. It's also a complex country, as I told in the seminar of VOCA. It's a country which is not organized in a simple Jacobine way. You have naturally the federal government, but then you have 22 official languages, you have 28 states, then you have 8 special places like Delhi and Jammu Kashmir, etc. And it's often looked at by us here from Europe and by the US as a very chaotic country when you first are in India. There are a lot of cultural differences. There are also, let's say, a lot of not tensions, that's a big word, but there are a lot of potential tensions inside and outside. We know about the different religions, there are different languages, etc. So it is not an easy country, but it's a country, I think, of opportunity. 1.3 billion people. It will be a country, a subcontinent where production will be done, where consumption will be held. We know about the rising middle class, and all that is demanding a lot of investment in infrastructure. And my advice, if you are, if you would ask me an advice when you want to explore the Indian opportunities, is to do that with help from people, with partnering people. And there, I think we have with Stefan and his team, with Yas, with Rajiv and Amit, people who are really helpful for businesses from Europe who want to enter that market. Because it is important to be listened to. You need always a consultant who's listening to you and who understands your priority, understands your business culture as well, naturally, as the business culture, the mentality, the traditional way of being in India as well as in Belgium, as in Europe. You do not get a full grasp of the potential growth you can have in India on one visit. You do not have on one visit a total view on the country. I'm going there since 25, 30 years, and sometimes I'm still puzzled by let's say, the unknown aspects of Indian society. Therefore, it takes perseverance and commitment, and a long-term vision. You need a horizon which is not too short. If you go to India, go for the long run and you will see the rewards. If you go for the short visit, it will bring you nothing. And before I hand over the floor to Stefan, Stefan van de Putte, who's co-hosting this event with his team. Stefan is naturally also a member of BICI, and as you know, I'm chairman of BICI, so I have to make some publicity for our organization, which is one of the best organizations of businesses between Belgium and another country, and that's not my words, those are the words of Claire Tillekaerts. Claire Tillekaerts, who's the CEO of Flanders Investment and Trade. So before giving the floor to Stefan, I want to thank all our BICI members for their continued support, because it's difficult for us. We do not have our normal meetings or normal seminars. We have to do everything through webinars, which is not the easiest way. But I thank them from the bottom of my heart that during those difficult times, they still support you. And we have also new members. We have new members in BICI since last week. And this is Mehdi Shegini, the manager of H Architects, whom I hope to welcome here in this seminar. Mr. Jan de Wever, the CEO of Jan de Wever Associates Business Consulting. And Mrs. Mirjam Schepers, managing director of Prefamac Chocolate Machines. She wrote me a beautiful email for which I thank her. And I hope to see you soon, real life, in person. I am still hesitating if we will be able to host our lunch appointment in September, as we usually have in Dworp. I'm not sure, but what I really am sure of is that we will be able to have on November 23rd, so that's still 11 months away from now, on November 23rd, our big event of catching the Indian tiger. It will be held in the Minar in Ghent. All the people who studied in Ghent know the Minar. It's a beautiful place. We will have also cultural part of the celebration there of catching the Indian tiger. And I really look forward to meet you all there. So that was my introduction. Keep up the good work. Do not be too pessimistic, because after thunderstorms, lightning, and very difficult situations in our families, in our businesses, there will be better times coming. And I believe that it's good to prepare for those better times now. Keep it safe, stay healthy. Stefan, the floor is yours. Bye-bye.
Hi, Philippe. Thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, we hope all that we will have the opportunity soon to meet again. Also, traveling to India is quite impossible these days, but let's hope that the situation will change fast. First of all, thank you to everyone to be present in the webinar. I will launch the presentation in 1 second. First of all, I would like to present myself and also my colleagues from DMH Advisors. Myself, I'm Stefan van der Putte. I'm the local representative in Flanders for DMH. DMH is a business advisor group of 3 people. I will present them right away, and all 3 will speak to you about the item that is dedicated today. Myself, my normal activity is recruitment and selection regarding Asia, especially India. But the difference we made in Start to Brick, my company, and also in DMH is that we not only offer, let's say, regarding recruitment, offer the right candidate, but we also help our customer later on, for example, in the recruitment and selection to start up these people in India. This could be in helping in drafting the contracts, a number of practical things regarding payroll, and also hosting the payroll temporarily when the customer is not ready yet or not willing yet to employ the person himself in India. Third party could be put intermediate so that the recruitment can start fast. And this will facilitate the startup of the people in India. And that's the same with DMH. I would like to present as well Rajiv, Amit and Inyas. It's the same with them. They are business consultants, but they don't limit themselves to, let's say, the draft of a plan, a program, etc., etc. They also come on board in practical things. But I will launch first the presentation. Give me 1 second. There it is. So is everybody seeing the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So that's the item of today. To participate in public procurement, maybe I will say first something on that item. Where does this item come from? This item was suggested by Vicky himself, by Birgit, because a number of times this question came already to the chamber, especially also in the latest virtual trade event in February that was organized and where also Birgit was participating. This item, like public tenders and also procurement, etc., was one of the questions that was raised. So therefore, Birgit and myself discussed if we could launch more information regarding this item, and therefore we contacted DMH. DMH I present here in Belgium, but first of all, here DMH, that is Rajiv, Dahwan, Amit Mittal, and Inyas Hendrik. So all 3 of these people will talk about with you today about the item. And what I would like to say, so DMH business advisors, they are not only active in market research, in the market entry and feasibility studies, but as I told, they are also involved in the helping the customers later on in a very practical way. It could be the due diligence, it could be partner identification where they do a pre-selection, talk with people and then present them to the customers. It could be also representing services. Very important in these days because traveling is quite difficult, not possible to India. So or you stop your business and contacting your customers, you can do it by webinar, but also DMH, like other consultants, can help you by representing you with customers, visiting them and preparing deals, etc., as DMH is doing these days. Also merger and acquisition and also government interaction. These things are possible by DMH. I will say 1 word about Rajiv, also about Amit and about Inyas. Rajiv is already 30 years experience in corporate affairs. and also in relation with European companies. He worked and lived with his family a certain period also in Belgium. So the advantage of DMH is they are not only an Indian organization, but they are very much aware, as well Rajiv, Amit and Inas, about the culture in Belgium, in the Flemish companies, the Walloons companies, etc., etc. And that's quite important. So Rajiv is mainly important in the strategies and in the business development. Amit had another background. He is a chartered accountant, so also in financial aspect, but also in upcoming technologies. And especially he's also gives some personal services regarding operation and distribution and logistics. So if you need some logistic plant or whatsoever, he is able to help you also. And the last person is Inas, but he will talk first in one moment. Inas is living already more than 15 years in India. So he's also proved that the intercultural action between India and Europe is very well organized and measured within DMH. And it's especially Inas who is making the market and the feasibility studies and also the product entry strategies. So that's the DMH group. They will give you the necessary information. Inas will give a kind of introduction, ideas that is important if you want to launch procurement and other actions in India. Rajiv will go more in detail regarding the public tenders, and Amit will go a little bit more in detail regarding similar possibilities of entering the Indian market, because, and that's one point that we for sure won't make, public tenders is one entry possibility in the Indian market, but not the only one. So people may focus on the public tenders, but it's good to know that there are other alternatives that works all together to be successful on the Indian market. So Inas, here your first slide. You have the word. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see some names of people I've met before in India or in Belgium, and some of you I might meet in future. About India. India has changed tremendously in the last decade. I give you 3 examples. First example, technology. Technology allows millions of Indians access to information, education, healthcare, banking, and shopping. Technology makes their lives easier, better, and simpler. The country has 700 million smartphone users. E-commerce players like Amazon, Walmart, and recently Reliance have understood what it means. 700 million smartphone users in combination with a 5G network give them the power to transform each phone into a virtual shopping platform. They bring millions of products to millions of customers living in almost 600,000 villages and cities of India. These are massive numbers, and that is what India is all about numbers. The strength, the power of India lies in the numbers. E-commerce. E-commerce is expected to grow from $30 billion in 2019 to $90 billion in 2024, reaching out to more than 300 million customers. Second example of a change in India, renewable energy. A growing country, a growing economy needs more electricity. At the same time, the country wants to contribute to a cleaner and greener planet by adding more solar and wind power. Just one idea to show you what's happening in the country in the field of solar. The world's biggest solar park is in Badla, near Jodhpur in Rajasthan. Its capacity is 2,245 megawatt. To put this number into a context, the biggest solar park in the Benelux is the Crystal Solar Park in Lommel, Limburg, with a capacity of 100 megawatt. This is just the beginning of an incredible story. The Indian government wants to achieve 450 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. That's 55% of the total requirement. There is a long way to go because last year the total requirement of solar was 37 gigawatt and power of wind was 38. My third and last example about a change in India. The third sector is aviation. Aviation is a growing sector. India wants to add 100 more airports for 1.1 billion flyers by 2040. Imagine what this means in terms of airport development, airport infrastructure management, ground support equipment, and aircraft maintenance. To support the aviation growth fueled by an expanding middle class, Boeing expects that India will need another 2,200 jet planes in the next 20 years. Today, the local domestic Indian carriers have a total fleet of 650 aircrafts. Of course, there are changes in other sectors. As you can see on the next slide, there are more potential sectors. They are, for instance, electric cars, railways, city development and infrastructure, logistics and warehousing, which have been mentioned by Stefan already, healthcare and pharma, food processing and food packaging, waste management and water treatment, defense equipment and pollution control. India is a market powered by a growing consumer class. It has attractive long-term potential for Belgian companies. I was thinking from my experience as a Belgian living in India, living and working in India for the last 15 years. I moved here in July 2006. I should share with you some points about entering the Indian market. Entering India requires a different leadership and market approach. Understanding these differences will give you an advantage in doing business with India. Let's start with the first one, leadership approach. How should your leadership, your top management, your CEO look at India? How should they go about it? A successful leadership approach for India is built on 3 strong pillars, and you see them. There are really strong pillars required to enter India. The first pillar is commitment. What do I mean with commitment? Your top management needs to be actively involved in entering India. Unless they say that India is important for the company, unless they commit personally and strongly support the plan, nothing will happen. If your top leadership, your top management is not committed to the India plan, it will just remain on the drawing board. Why is Barco? And you all know Barco from Kortrijk. Why is Barco one of the success stories in India? There are more success stories, of course, but I just pick one. Why is Barco a success story? Because the then CEO, Hugo van Damme, personally committed to the entry into India. He was convinced that in the long run, India was important for Barco, and he moved the plan forward. Like the first pillar. Second pillar, long-term engagement. India is not a place that you can conquer in just 1 year. It takes time to understand the market and business culture. The payback time on investment is long. Don't make the mistake by pulling out too early and hoping to come back when times are better. By that time, international competitors or Indian firms might have eaten your market share. Things won't happen overnight. Don't lose your patience. Don't lose your cool. To succeed in India, you need a long-term engagement. Again, to give the example from Barco, They are here since 1996 already. They started with 50 employees. Today, they are 500. And Barco India became a market leader in its domain. Third pillar, boots on the ground. That's very important. You cannot manage your Indian operations sitting in Belgium. You are too far from and for your customers. You cannot get a clear picture of what's happening in the market. You don't get a feeling of the dynamics, the changes. It's not possible to run India through video calls. It doesn't work on a remote control. You need boots on the ground. You need a local management team in India. You have to give them the freedom to run the organization within a predefined framework and a long-term budget. I would say it's not only about boots on the ground, but also eyes on the ground. You need to be here to see what's happening. People have a different way of reporting, of telling things, of hiding things. It's important you have your own eyes here. Another Belgian company here, Bekaert. When Bekaert started years ago in Pune, they had sent Arnold Kammerbeke from Kortrijk to set up the plant and to run the plant. And that was the right decision for Bekaert. And we have seen this with many other Belgian companies. I can name Barco, Hakko, Reinders Labeling, Soudal. All of them had in the beginning a Belgian manager or a manager from their Belgian company. This was the first thing. To enter India, you need a different leadership approach. It is based on 3 strong pillars, which is commitment, long-term engagement, and boots on the ground. Now, on the next slide, we will talk about market approach. How should you go about entering the Indian market? A successful market approach for India is also based on 3 strong pillars. Let's start with the first one, which is called geographical area. It's extremely important to have a good understanding of the Indian market before pushing the start button. Entering India requires a well-designed plan, backed by serious talk and careful research. IKEA took 12 years before they opened their first shop in India. That's a bit long, but it showed that you cannot enter India overnight. India, as Mr. Vreerik said, is not a country, but a continent and subcontinent. Its area is 108 times bigger than Belgium. The distance from Srinagar in the north all the way to Trivandrum in the south is 3,675 kilometers. That's about the same distance when you go by car from Kortrijk to Portugal and back. That's the massive area of India. You cannot start selling your product in each corner of the country. Like we said, distances are just too far, and infrastructure, although improving year after year, might still be an issue. Just one question. When you sell medical products, will you target the states with the highest population or the ones with the highest income levels? Our advice is to start by testing one region, maybe a 10+ million city like Bangalore, Delhi, or Bombay. You learn, adjust, and then expand gradually to another area. The second pillar about the market approach is market segment. They say that in India, every 50 kilometers, the water tastes different, the local language is different, and the culture is different. Don't make the mistake, India is not one big market. It's a complex marketplace with many micro markets and diverse customer groups. And in other words, India is a patchwork of sub-markets. You need products adapted for each micro market and offer them at the right price with a suitable and appealing packaging. Talking about packaging, when you are dealing in packaging technology and you want to focus on the food processing sector, will you start with the regions with the highest fluctuation in humidity and temperature, which impacts the quality of the food? Or will you target the big cities of India where the middle class lives and cares about preserving the nutritious value of the food? Our advice is to start or to carry out a very serious SWOT analysis of the market based on careful research by a professional consultant, and we at DMH can help you there. The third and last pillar about market approach for India: strength. Which product or service will you export to India? Our advice is to evaluate and look at the undermet and underserved needs in India, and at the same time look at your competitive advantage and positioning. What is your unique exportable capability, your strength, your incredible advantage that will withstand competition in India? For instance, when you are making some of the best machines on the planet for chocolate making, how will you position yourself in a country that cares less about quality and more about price? If the opportunity is too obvious, the market will be very quickly crowded. The field is already crowded in retail and e-commerce. We have the big players, like I said, Amazon, Walmart, and Reliance. Here's what the second thing: a successful market approach for India is based on 3 strong pillars. It's about defining your geographical area, your market segment, and your strength. Define as an action verb. Without taking action, India will just remain on the drawing board. Things don't work on remote control. You need to be willing to compete in the Indian market. It's a hard job, but it's worth it. Before finalizing your market approach, test it on a small scale. It will help you to understand the market dynamics and challenges and enable you to change your strategy before scaling up. Your success in India will depend on the correct estimation of the country's potential and challenges. To conclude my talk, a few words about public tenders in India, and that's my last slide, Stefan, about procurement. What is public procurement? It's the purchase of goods and services by the public sector for their operational needs. In India, this can be purchased by the central government, the states, local government bodies, and public sector undertakings. Each of them can have their own website for procurement, or they can use the Central Public Procurement Portal, which Amit will explain later. We also have a government e-marketplace, which is launched in 2016 for common goods and services. This public procurement is worth 30,000 crore rupees, of more than 1,000 billion euro. It's worth to learn more about procurement in India, and that is what my colleague Rajiv will do now. He will talk more about the specifics of procurement. Rajiv, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Ines. I hope my voice is audible to everyone.
That's good, perfect.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Stefan, and also, thank you, Philippe Leric, for his very nice and kind and opening words. They were very touching, and I was really very happy to hear him. What he spoke was very sensitive in the current situation that we have. Coming to the subject, we are absolutely aware of the fact that, when we talk about public procurement, the subject can be very intimidating or even a bit complex. As you all know, India itself is a bit of a complex country, and we are quite aware of that. And come up to the things which are very simple and more valuable for you to understand and appreciate about public procurement. India, just before I go into my 4 slides, I just want to tell you that, India, as you know, and I think Baron Leric also mentioned it, we have a strong parliamentary democracy with a federal structure, So we have the union or the central government, which is headed by the prime minister in the executive authority. And then we also have very strong provincial or the regional governments, each of them headed by a chief minister. So there is a 7th schedule of the constitution that we have in our country that defines, a central list, a state list, and a concurrent list. That means subjects which are under the domain of the central government. These could be like defense, could be railways, could be sanitization, medical care, and those kind of things. And then there is also concurrent list where there is a jurisdiction that can have government or from the central government, and that's something like a power generation, So you have the central power utilities also, and you have the state electricity boards also that generate electricity, So, the idea of saying this is that don't get intimidated or concerned or confused that, look, it's a complex country and public procurement is this thing. We will be able to help you. And of course, if there are any specific questions, we would welcome that even to answer that in detail later on, Now coming to the insights or some specifics on public procurement. The central government in India has barred companies from countries that do not allow Indian companies to participate in their government procurement. I mean, if, for example, and just to give you an example, if Iran says that, I will not entertain an Indian company to participate in my public procurement, then on a quid pro quo basis, we also will not allow. So that's like a national policy. Then the second thing is now the foreign companies have been approaching a lot the Indian advisory, whether it's the CA firms or the business advisory groups or the companies, because there is a new investments and the rules which are in line with what we call Atmanirbhar Bharat, So Atmanirbhar Bharat is basically nothing but it means a self-reliant India, because it has been realized a little bit belatedly, in our journey since becoming an independent country that we have manufacturing strength, a lot of that in the country, but a lot of that is also in individual pockets, So as you know that for any manufacturing company, you only achieve real success through economies of scale, because that's the way you drive down the cost of manufacturing. And therefore you become also more competitive in terms of supplies to your product. Also, it helps on a qualitative scaling up of your product, when you have a certain economies and not dealing on a small. So the Atmanirbhar Bharat will explain that a little bit to you also in detail. Then also, in order to promote local manufacturing, the Department for the Promotion of Industrial Investment and Trade, that is in short form is called DPIIT, they have amended the public procurement rules now to say that there should be a minimum of 20% local content to participate in public tenders. Now, as a result of that approach or policy, this has prompted a lot of the foreign companies or firms to expedite or to hasten the process of setting up shop in India, because, if you are going to have ultimately participation in public tender with the 20% local content, then it's better that, you have a foot on the ground, as also was explained by one of the previous slides. And companies like Dixon, or Foxconn, if you remember, that was producing all the electronic, the smartphones, if in China or lots of the Southeast Asian countries on behalf of Apple and the big players, they are also being invited now to set up shop in India, to make large-scale electronic manufacturing of a certain scale. Then food processing is also defined as a very important thrust area on the productive linked investments enhancement schemes, and also the textile sectors. Now, these are just 3 sectors, but there are 10 others also. Now, the criteria is that you should have a minimum threshold investment, and that why I did not write the specifics on individual sector, because that varies sector to sector. So you should have a criteria of minimum threshold investment and the sales. And once you are qualified, then you get incentives that can range from 3 to 11%, and depending on the specific sector. So that's basically what is behind the PLI scheme. And that's the one that is also a new scheme that has been launched, since quite recently. Next slide, Stefan. Okay. Now, another very important point to understand is no global tender for procurement is there for items, which is if the value is less than INR 2,000 million or INR 2 billion, which translates to about US dollars 25 million, or if I can say about 20 or 21 million euros, So that means they have specified, that's a threshold point, that if the tender value is less than that, then it will not be a global tender. So which means that only tenders of value of $25 million and above will be basically floated for global participation. Then every central ministry or department set on their own an annual target of 25% procurement from SME. Now, that's a very important policy decision that has been taken, which means that they more and more want to actively encourage the involvement of the small and the medium scale industries. And I know that even Belgium, Flemish company, okay, there are big companies, but a lot of that is also an activity which is built on the SME industry, And what they have defined is that for the entry classification and investment threshold, So what means is either by investment in we find a 10 million rupees to 100 million rupees, which is basically translates to a US dollar 125,000 and going up to $1.25 million. And then for a medium company, 100 million rupees to 200 million INR. This is for the investment, and which means basically US dollar 1.25 million to 2.5 million. Now, this is one criteria of being classified as a small or medium. The other could be on the turnover, which is the sales turnover. So even if
Rajiv, we cannot hear you anymore. Sound is...
Sorry. Could you not hear me well? Can you hear me better now?
Yes, now I hear you back.
Sorry. Do you want me to, Bridget, you want me to repeat few things?
No, we were at point 2, the turnover threshold.
Okay, so okay, fine. So either, as I mentioned, that you could have for a small company an investment threshold criteria for a smaller medium company, or you could have a turnover threshold, defined. And where, we are talking of a small company between 50 million to 500 million INR, and for a medium company for going from 500 million INR to 1 billion INR. So these classifications have been made and determined in order to be more clear and to be more responsive of the fact that every central ministry, department or PSU will have greater number of SME participation. Now, we all understand that doing business has a fair share of challenges in India. And I think this was also mentioned by Philippe in his opening remarks. But in view of the amended rules, it's extremely important, and we would always encourage each of the companies who are willing to enter, or at least willing to even explore to enter the Indian market, to must take a proper advice and seek greater clarity in order to enter the market, and that's always well worth the time which is spent, Now, one very important development that has happened is that, as you know, that China and India, there has been a certain kind of a competition between the two countries. Both of them are large countries, Asian countries, cheap labor to begin with. But China has, of course, scaled much faster on the value chain as well as on the manufacturing scale compared to India. It's also to do with the fact that the politics and the way they run the country is very different from the parliamentary democracy that we have in India. So there are lots of pulls and pressures that we have for a parliamentary democracy that may not be visible to somebody participating in China. But particularly since last year, there are a lot of tariffs and non-tariff measures, that have been taken, in order to stop the flow of cheap imports from China, because we were getting, really swamped by a lot of those cheap imports. And the idea was that it has been rethought about that, why should, these products which can be easily produced in India, why should they just be, brought in from, China, for swamping the Indian market, So that's also an important step that has happened, And that when we talk about tariff or non-tariffs, it could be quantitative restrictions. It could be in the case of agriculture products, phytosanitary certificates. It could also be, countervailing duties or anti-dumping duties. These are the kind of measures, especially, targeted towards China that have been done, Now, as India has a very huge domestic market and a very, very big middle class, and I'm talking of, something between 250 million to 300 million people as a market, in the middle class, in the long run, it's our view that it's advisable for any manufacturing or processing entity, to consider India as a very important investment hub, not just as an investment hub to feed the local market, which is a very big market, but also as an investment hub to use this market as a leverage point to serve a lot of the other markets, in parts of the world, because you will have the advantage of, not only an economical labor cost, but also an educated workforce, an English-speaking workforce, very intelligent in the usage of the digital technologies, a very advanced banking system that we have already in place in the country, with a lot of digital interface, So it's always advisable for anybody wanting to enter to look into it that way positively, Now, economically, as you know, the SMEs, and this is just to emphasize, they contribute close to 25% to the services sector and 6% to the manufacturing sector GDP in the country, And they also account for close to about 45%, of all exports out of India. And they employ close to 120 million people, 120 million people are employed just by the SME sector in India, So it's a massive sector, Now, that's why we always say that we would always recommend that even small companies in Belgium, even small entities, should not shy away. They should not, because they should not think, no, we are a small company. Is it going to be very costly to enter the market? Is it going to be too many steps, too many complexities? No. We always recommend that even for small entities, they should not shy away from looking at collaborations, associations, or JVs while seeking to get their know-how. If they have a know-how, which is a product know-how or a process know-how, they should not shy away from, getting that registered for IP protection or even a trademark protection, because this will also help them to actively participate in the public procurement, when they actually participate in public tenders. And then, Stefan, the next slide. The last slide, Stefan. Yeah. So therefore, coming on the background of this, our basic points on the recommendation would be, and I think this was also mentioned probably by Inyas, but we know that, sometimes when we talk to some of the clients, they are not very hot about things like market research or market feasibility, but we can tell you from experience that it makes eminent sense to spend a little bit on that, and also to spend some time and effort on doing a proper market research and feasibility, because this is something that is going to contribute tremendously to your knowledge of your sector in the Indian market. We also encourage people to do a test marketing of a product, before to actually sometimes launch their product or even participate in public procurement, because test marketing of a product, whether through a private player or whether through a state procurement or whether participating in a limited tender process, is a very good way, to actually test your product in the Indian market. Market collaboration, we spoke about that. So, and market collaboration could be with an existing player, could be with the, by defining with with a dealer or a distribution network also, and so that you don't really put too much of your cost in the initial way, and that is the other way kind of you can qualified example, which is a world specialized company. I think it's a Flemish company in the field of tunneling and boring, for highways and infrastructure projects. Now that company mentioned to us in one of our discussions that they do not want to directly enter as a vendor or participate in a public tender, but they are happy to be like a sub-vendor to a qualified player, because they have that kind of specialization and know-how to serve the market, very cutting edge. So I think it's not a bad. This is also a ways. Then obviously support of an experienced and knowledgeable partner for the market entry could be on an advisory or consulting basis, but do not shy away from this. This is going to be very helpful to you. And the last point, which I think Baron Vlerik also mentioned, and everyone mentioned that it's a long-term story in India. The results will take some years to mature. India has talked about Barco and Bekat and lots of companies. I can talk about also who took their time and who have been in the Indian market for many years. But ultimately, the results will come. You have to be a bit patient and you have to understand the market and its dynamics very well. So this is, Stefan, what I would like to say. Thank you very much. And we will entertain all the technical details on the tender.
Yeah. Hi, good morning. I'm Amit Mittal. I'll take you to the process of participating in tender and also will tell you how you can participate in that growth story. And thank you, Vicky, Start to Break, all the participants and my colleagues for arranging this webinar. Thank you so much. Can we go to the next slide, Stefan? So see, when we talk of public procurement, if any point of time my voice is not audible, please raise a voice. I mean, Brigitte or Stefan, you can let me know. So when we talk of public procurement, I'd like to repeat that what all comes within the domain of public procurement. So when I'm talking of public procurement, I'm talking of all the purchases which are done by ministries, various government departments, municipal and local bodies, all government companies which are formed under a statute, all public sector undertaking, autonomous bodies, regulatory bodies. In nutshell, each and everything which is funded by the government comes, and the need of procurement comes under public procurement. And before we go on to understand these rules and processes, I will take you to the four important things why these rules are structured in the manner the way they are. The first thing is that public procurement is dealing with the public money. So there has to be a judicious use of that. So it is subject to parliamentary scrutiny, the scrutiny by vigilance, the scrutiny by audit group. So use of public money has to be done judiciously. Second thing is that government is the largest buyer in this country. So Stefan, please stay on the last slide. I'll tell you. So government is the largest buyer in this country. They contribute about 30% of the GDP directly or indirectly. So they have to build a trust and transparency between all the suppliers from whom they are procuring. So that is the reason why the rules you will find when I take you are built in the way they are. Third is the promotion of a specific sector. Since they are the largest buyer, if suppose a sector has to be promoted, whether it is MSME, the medium and small sector which they want to promote, or some particular industry or a regional development. So they will like to do it by this spending that they are doing in procurement. And lastly, like private sector, government does not have the flexibility to have their procurement rules designed. So everything is defined in upfront since it's subject to parliamentary review, judicially review, and that is one of the reasons that the flexibility is lacking. The rules are structured in a manner that they are. With the advent of technology, all our procurements are done online. They are fairly transparent. The information is always available in the public domain. What you see here is a picture of the central procurement portal, which is the entry gate to all procurements which are done by central government ministries. Next slide, please. So we have this central procurement portal. It is a single point access for all procurement needs of various ministries which come under the domain of central government. As Baron Flerick mentioned, we are a complex country. We have got 29 states, 9 special structures which are called union territories. So all these, we have a government at the center level and we have a government or state level. So central public procurement portal is for the purpose of all the ministries and all the bodies which come under central government. So two sector, very important sector, defense and railways are part of central procurement generally. This portal all the state government sites and different other sites. So, I mean, once you are on this portal, you can go to a respective state site also. So typically the state subjects are health, sanitation, inland security. So all tenders or procurement related to these would be hosted by the respective state government. What does this portal provide? This portal will provide you the complete tender documentation in detail. It will help you to do the online bid submission. It will also keep you updated on the bid happening, whatever the clarification that are issued or the bid opening date and relevant updates would be coming through this portal. And you will be happy to know that last year we have a financial year system which operates from April to March. So last financial year of 2021, a business worth $10 billion was transacted through this portal. So that way we are very transparent, very open. Then we have this government e-marketplace, which Inyas also mentioned, and probably it is one of the largest online marketplace for government purchases. So whatever are the routine purchases, the regular procurement of government, which are normally the consumable, we can put the office stationery or the catering stuff that come into it. The supplier can register on this e-marketplace and government departments can directly go to this portal and procure it directly without following the tedious tender process. So this is the online marketplace for regular purchases. I'm talking of a general overview. So when we are talking within this system now, government is promoting startups, and within startups, the micro and small enterprises are encouraged to participate in public procurement. And for them, the special waiver is that they do not have a come to with a prior experience. They do not have to fulfill the turnover criteria, and they even do not have to make a upfront deposit for becoming eligible to participate in that tender. And let me tell you, for being categorized as a startup or micro or small enterprise, the only eligibility is that you have to set up in India a company or a limited liability partnership. It is not necessary that who's the owner. The only thing is the company should be registered in India. You qualify as a startup. So this is a good thing for a startup. This benefit gets extended for 3 years time once it is enrolled as a startup. And then we have the usual conditions which are regarding to registrations and financial clearances. I mean, I will not go into them. Next, please, Stefan. So see, these are the technical criteria, and we have to be very careful when we are filing a tender, because if we do not meet a technical criteria, we are not eligible for the next stage. We'll see how it actually works. So as of now, the status to promote self-reliant India, government has a process dictated or mandated that any procurement less than INR 2 billion has to be done locally. So, and any procurement beyond $2 billion INR can be a global tender where everybody can participate. So if your company wants to participate in a tender which is less than $25 million in India, then you would have to create an entity in India to participate. Or there are alternate method also, which I mentioned at the end of this presentation. So the preference is for the companies or businesses based in India, that's very clear. And also within those companies, any company which is having a higher local content. So Make in India is by being promoted like this. So if you're making lots of components in India, then you get a preference in a tender. We have other technical qualifications which are normally the sales turnover. I mean, for a tender worth $10 million, government would want to have a company with at least a turnover of $30 million in the last 3 years, the average of that. So this is their kind of a criteria to understand the financial capabilities of the company and their experience. They would also like to see the turnover is coming from a similar activity or it is something from a different aspect. So this is also evaluated. And similarly, the experience of working with a government body before and personal capabilities, these are all part of tender documents. I will repeat that these have to be read and understood clearly before we are going in for a tender, and you need to be very well aware of the terms that are there, because if we do not fulfill a technical qualification, we are not eligible to participate or even get evaluated for the tender. Stefan, next please. I'm coming to the bidding process. This is most interesting and this is the most complex part of the game, I would say, because in bidding, as per the complexity of the tender or as per the complexity of procurement, I've actually put them into 4 different slots. I would say that the first 3 actually defines the complexity. We have got single stage bidding with a single envelope, multiple envelope. So single stage, single envelope is the simplest one. Then we have 2-stage bidding. Then we have got pre-qualification criteria, and then we have got reverse auction. So this is how the complexity would change. I'll just go very briefly into single stage, multiple envelope, and 2-stage and pre-qualification. So what multiple envelope is, I mentioned you before that there is a general condition and then there's a technical. So a multiple envelope is a bid which goes in 2 different envelopes. So first part of the envelope is your technical bid and second part of the envelope is your financial bid. So in the technical bid, the evaluators will see whether you are meeting the technical eligibility, and if that is taken care of, then only we move on to the second stage, which is the financial or the commercial part. Otherwise, the bid is rejected at the that stage. Even the financial bid is not opened. So that is why I was emphasizing the technical criteria are very important. So what happens in 2-stage bidding? See, 2-stage bidding is normally for a complex project. Let's put a kind of an infrastructure project where a bridge has to be constructed. So this is a specialized kind of a work. So government would like to make a short list of people, those who are eligible. So the first stage of bidding would be to find out the people through discussion process or by inviting a request for quotation from people that, okay, this is the project which we are about to offer. So let us know whether you are eligible or not. Based on the RFQ that is, request for quotation that is received, based on those RFQs, the government will say select a lot of people, those who would be like invited for the second stage, which is the actual bidding process, or who would be handed over those tender documents to participate. So only eligible people would be participating in that bid process. And pre-qualification criteria is similar to 2-stage bidding, where government would make a selection of the people who can actually participate for this tender or who are eligible for this tender. Stefan, next slide, please. Yeah, this is the bidding process. I will not go into detail due to the time limitation. And I think this presentation is available and you can please ask Bridget or you can ask us. We'll be happy to share it with you. The next one, please. See, this is an important slide. And this slide, I would like to talk of the post-tender risk. Once you are awarded a tender and the pre-tender. And see that I would say getting a tender is 1/3 of the job. So 2/3 of the job other than execution will come after once we have received the tender or the tender has been awarded. So what happens normally with governments is once a tender has been awarded, there is actually a delay in issuing a purchase order. So once we have a tender which has been awarded, but we are awaiting a detailed work order from the concerned department or the ministry, which may take some time before it is actually issued, because tender award is one stage, but of course work award or work implementation is another stage. Then there are protracted negotiations. So tender, coming as a winner in tender is not the last thing for you. Normally in the last size tender, even after becoming the lowest person or the most eligible suitor, if government finds that there are other eligible suitors also, they may be also called for negotiation or discussions at a different stage. They may be asked to do a reverse auction, which is very much possible. So this was the fourth. This was one of the point, if you remember, on my the type of bid. So they can be called for a reverse auction where they find, okay, there are 2 more eligible people who should come, and maybe we can have a base price and let everybody offer their quote on that. There can be rebidding. Because as I said, government projects are subject to public scrutiny, the scrutiny by Auditor General, the scrutiny by vigilance, scrutiny by courts, scrutiny by public. So if they feel that there are detailed competition laws in public procurement, and there's a standard manual which prescribes it in case the procuring department or the requisition authority feels that the competition has not been given a fair chance, they can go for a rebidding process also. So this is one of the, I would say, risk associated with this. And there could be a change in the work. I mean, that's a part of the tender document. We would have to read it very carefully. If somewhere in the fine print it says that government or the procuring agency has a right to change the work quantity, they can very well do that. So that is what we have to done at the consider at the bidding stage. So we have to study those tender documents or the procuring documents very carefully for what we are actually committing. And pre-tender process would be, I would say that 1 minute, I think it's a time consuming process. I think we are running out of time. So maybe we can go to the next slide, and if someone has a question, they can send it to me. See, ways of participating in the tender directly, of course, by setting up an entity, there are different ways: a wholly owned subsidiary, a limited liability partnership, joint venture. One thing I would like to touch upon is the indirect participation. And indirect participation, what I mean, it's a very important one, and this could be by way of like technology transfer or acting as a subcontractor to the person who has been awarded this tender. So we talk of boots on ground, we talked of hands on ground. I'm saying nose in air. So you have to be aware of what is happening in India, which are the tenders which would excite you. If you're not eligible to participate directly, maybe you can participate as a subcontractor to the awardee of the contract. So this is one of the very interesting element, and we are available for discussing all these multiple possibilities and your interest. And let me tell you, public procurement is one of the largest growing area in India, and with a GDP share of 30%, which is, I believe, is highest in world, is very interesting for you to consider. I'm open to any questions. We are all here, and I'm done. Stefan, can we go to next? That's the end of my presentation.
So thank you, Amit. Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you, Inyas, for the information. So sometimes voice was not there, but I think we still could follow, let's say, 99% of the presentation. So also the slideshow is available. This will be sent by Brigitte, I believe, afterwards. But are there questions? Are there somebody who want to ask to Rajiv or to Amit or to Inyas regarding the item of today?
Well, without being directly involved, there was still one question that came to my mind, and you mentioned that you could participate as a subcontractor, but how will you get to know to whom you have to offer then?
So Brigitte, what you're asking, how do you find such a subcontractor to participate?
No. If you want to be a subcontractor, how do you find the company that you have to offer?
The main contractor, yeah. How to spot them?
So Brigitte, if I may answer you on a little bit on that. I gave the example of Dennis, for example. Now, Dennis, their specialization is in the tunneling and boring, Now, the companies in India which are participating in public tenders, let's say a big infrastructure project, in a complex chain, let's say expertise to do that,
Yeah.
So if they may not have, let's say, the necessary expertise to do that, So when they don't have the necessary expertise, they can certainly approach, a company, like Dennis, for example. And for that, Dennis will also have to keep a little bit their ears and eyes open, to understand as to what are the opportunities that are coming along the way, And in fact, the last time they discussed with us, they were very keen to know that they can enter into a kind of a collaboration with somebody, but without being actually participant themselves as a front company in the tender, So that's an example, that somebody could be a sub vendor or could be a sub participant without being an actual face in the tender, And that's perfectly allowed, by the way.
Okay, thank you very much. And there was another question coming to my mind listening, and then you mentioned this e-marketplace. So what kind of, well, you mentioned it for all kind of procurement, but maybe it's interesting for our smaller companies to have a look at that side rather than to do the big tender thing.
Yes. Amit, would you like to say something?
Bridget, this e-marketplace is for regular suppliers, or I would say consumables. So if you have supplies for housekeeping, stationery, and all these stuff, I mean, for which there is no specialized knowledge, and you have a proper branded kind of stuff, I would say, packaged goods.
Not for infrastructure works or like selling cement or whatever. Nothing like that.
Not for specialized, but of course, if you're selling cement, that comes under a package and a kind of goods which is properly profiled. But of course, cement is normally not procured through that. They have all contracts. But of course, regular supply, let's put it a supplier which is less than in terms of Indian rupees 200,000 or 300,000, something like this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions?
If there are some specific questions, Bridget, we would also encourage that people can email it to us or to Stefan. And that way, sometimes, it will get over this handicap of the audio sometime not being,
Okay.
Okay, Rajith. It was not fully understand what the last words you were telling. But,
sorry. I was only saying to Bridget that if anybody would like to email a question, sometimes that's a better way for us to answer. Because sometimes the audio is not behaving too well, and we prefer to think it's your side, not our side.
Okay. So no, if there are no further questions, thank you very much. So I want to thank first of all Vicky to create the opportunity to organize this, because also the item was indicated based on the virtual fit trade mission in February, and also some of these similar questions that you received before. So the chamber is really the platform to exchange concerns, questions whatsoever, and to meet people, because that brings us much further. Also, the participants list, I believe, Brigitte, you will distribute it to all participants. So if they want to contact each other, networking is very important. So that's also a thing that we will do. I also want to thank DMH consultants, my 3 colleagues in India, because it's quite a very difficult time. I got them a couple of times on the line. There are sometimes family concerns whatsoever. There are very limited families in India for the time being that are not hit one way or another with the corona and so on. So thank you very much for the preparation and the time, and also to be present today. Thank you very much. And also to the participants, thank you for being present. I really personally believe that India will come on more on the spot, on the focus of European companies in the next months, for 2 reasons. First of all, China was very much centralized on the focus, but there is some struggle going on, competition going on between the States and China. So also European companies have to be to be more careful. But another thing happened also recently. I saw that also the trade negotiations will be restarted between India and Europe. They were held up, let's say, a couple of years ago. So I think that's also important. So I think India will become much more on the focus also for European companies, and maybe also for your company. So if this is the case, I wish you all the best. If you need some support of help, the chamber is there. And also, let's say DMH is there, able to help you. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.